Clinically speaking, the biggest shift that happens in training, especially when you move from being a student to a clinician, is not your knowledge, but your thinking. Students often think, what is the correct answer? Whereas as a clinician, your job is to manage the risks. In this video for today, I will be talking about what are the most important points that distinguish the clinician from the student and the student from the clinician. Hi, my name is Kat and I'm a speech therapist, and this is Clinically Speaking, the channel for speech therapy students and anyone within speech therapy who want clear, confident, and real-life clinical scenarios without all the fluff. I am here to help you study smarter and not necessarily harder. And I think in essence, just navigate the career of being a speech therapist. So here are the points. The first point is that there's a shift from wanting answers or having the answers and moving to making decisions. Students often ask, what is the correct answer? Whereas clinicians ask, what is the safest and most ethical decision that can be made right now? When you move from being a student to a clinician, you kind of step outside of the textbook and into real life. And often these decisions that are made are very, very much context dependent. Because if you think about the context, there are many different aspects at play that you would not necessarily think about as a student, but now as a clinician, you take it into account. This video specifically is for people, or students rather, who are transitioning from that student, from being in fourth year, from just doing your clinical pracs and now being into a real life situation with real patients and integrating into health or the education sector. Point number 2 is that the reasoning starts to outweigh the recall. Everything that you've memorized does not necessarily matter until you are able to apply it the right way. As clinicians, we often have good clinical reasoning. So clinical reasoning often involves, anticipating consequences that could happen, anticipating the cultural expectations that are there, outweighing the probabilities, as well as recognizing the patterns and acting on those patterns. Point number 3. There is a sense of client over the task. When you're a student, you are often focused on completing the objectives and achieving certain goals. But as a clinician, there are certain things that you start to prioritize. So you prioritize things such as consent, which is one of the most important ethical aspects that we consider as professionals. You start to prioritize things like comfort. You start to prioritize things like rapport. Our careers often thrive on creating connection. The minute we have a great connection with either the client or the patient or our team members or the family to the client is the minute we're able to have successful intervention or intervention that matters. Another thing that we also prioritize is regulation. You cannot have intervention that means something if your client is not regulated. And this speaks to any kind of population, whether you're within adults or you're within peds. Point number 4 would be thinking in systems. And out of everything that I've said, I think this is one of the most important ones. As a clinician, you start to think of different environments in which you operate. So the home environment, the school or work demands that may come up for the patient. You start to look at things like cultural expectations, resource limitations. All of these things are at play, and they are very important factors, especially when you look at the South African context, where our biodemographics are quite widespread and they're different. We've got different languages, different cultures, different traditions. We also look at the differences that exist from public to private within the health system and the education system. So there is a very big shift that is going to be uncomfortable, but you start to operate in systems, and those systems also include a team. Point number 5, a shift of responsibility. When you're a student, you often defer the responsibility, but as a clinician, you are the person that stands as, the accountability officer for your clients and in the environment that you work in. So you look at, ethical conduct, documentation accuracy. Are you able to record your sessions the way that you should? The communication that you have with parents or with caregivers or with other stakeholders. You're looking at things like your scope of practice. Those are the important things that then require you to be responsible. Once you become a clinician, it is about being uncomfortable with uncertainty, tolerating uncertainty, and prioritizing safety over performance. You are there to help that shift move from the textbook to the real life that's happening. I hope that today's video was really helpful. Please comment below and let me know what were the biggest shifts that happened with you when you moved from being a student to more of a practical therapist and being at the hospital or being at a school or being at a clinic. I would really like to know. If you enjoyed today's video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye.